Early into the second invasion of Iraq, a lightly armored Marine recon platoon equipped with Humvees and 50-caliber machine guns suddenly finds itself face-to-face with a column of Iraqi tanks and armored vehicles. The Iraqis charge forward, confident in their overwhelming firepower. A bloody massacre seems inevitable, but 60 seconds later, the battlefield is transformed. The column of armored vehicles is in full retreat, leaving dozens of tanks and infantry fighting vehicles behind them as smoking wrecks. And it was all the work of one American soldier. Find out about this incredible story and more on today's episode of The Infographic Show. Modern-day soldiers with the highest kill counts. Unknown U.S. Air Force aviator. Operation Iraqi Freedom. Unknown kill count. Estimated dozens. The 2003 Iraq invasion was so bold it even had the Pentagon sweating. A mere 200,000 U.S. troops were about to go head-to-head with 500,000 Iraqi forces. Sounded like a recipe for disaster. But the U.S. wasn't just bringing troops, it was bringing something far deadlier. A new breed of force multipliers that would make numbers irrelevant and rewrite the rules of modern warfare. In the second week of the invasion, a reconnaissance platoon of American Marines was caught out in the open by a large Iraqi armored force. Alerted to their presence by locals, the Iraqis had rushed a large concentration of tanks and infantry fighting vehicles to annihilate the American scouts. Knowing they were unlikely to win a stand-up fight, Iraqi forces hoped to score demoralizing and humiliating victories, such as the one being served up on a silver platter, in order to deter the American population from supporting the war. Several dozen tanks and armored vehicles rushed to surprise the Americans, who were equipped with little more than Humvees and 50-caliber machine guns. But to the Iraqi commander's surprise, the Marines didn't budge. Instead, they unleashed their secret super weapon, a radio. With one radio call, a circling B-52 loitering high in the atmosphere came to the rescue, dropping 6 CBU-105 wind-corrected munitions dispensers over the Iraqis' heads. These cluster bombs used GPS guidance to unleash a storm of smaller BLU-108 submunitions. Resembling a large hockey puck, the BLU-108 utilizes onboard sensors to identify enemy vehicles, guides itself directly over them, and then fires an explosively formed penetrator directly through the thin roof armor of the vehicle. No one knows exactly how many Iraqi troops were killed that day, but the pilot flying that B-52, dropping angry hockey pucks over the enemy, very quickly became one of modern history's highest kill count soldiers. The Iraqi insurgency, however, would have a deadly hero of their own. Juba, Iraq War, estimated 37. In mid-2005, coalition forces began to be targeted by a sniper known only as Juba. Primarily operating around Baghdad, Juba's attacks would frequently take place against troops working checkpoints, ambushing them from inside a soundproofed van that he used as a shooting platform. What made the unknown sniper rise to prominence, however, was the videos he uploaded to the internet, which were quickly shared across the world. And yet nobody knows much about him, and U.S. intelligence doubts he was ever actually real to begin with. Allegedly, Juba was once a member of the Islamic Army in Iraq before switching mid-season to play for Al-Qaeda's team. In early 2005, the first attack credited to Juba was carried out in the Baghdad metro area. But long before that, there were rumors throughout Iraqi provinces of a master sniper targeting coalition soldiers. On June 2, 2005, a sniper attack on a checkpoint left one American wounded, with the sniper being quickly tracked down and apprehended along with a cameraman filming the attack. The sniper denied being Juba, but the cameraman insisted it was him. A year later, a Marine counter-sniper killed an enemy sniper near Habanaya, recovering an M40A1 that had been used in an attack 2 years prior. The sniper displayed similar techniques as the infamous Juba. Yet, according to the sniper that eliminated him, he displayed very poor fieldcraft, which had quickly given away his location. Surely this wasn't the feared Iraqi sniper. In 2007 and 2008, several more videos featuring attacks on coalition troops emerged, all credited to Juba. By now, that name had garnered global fame, with several pieces of media such as graphic novels developed about him. Then, just as quickly as he came, Juba disappeared, likely eliminated by an American counter-sniper team. By the end of his short career, Juba had killed 37 coalition troops, mostly Americans, and yet Juba may have never existed at all. Attacks credited to Juba displayed a wild variety of skill and precision, with some attacks being very poorly executed and displaying poor marksmanship. Meanwhile, other attacks displayed an extremely high level of proficiency. This has led many to believe that Juba was an invention of the insurgency meant to lift morale, and never a real person at all. Christian Craighead, various British SAS operations, official unknown, estimated dozens. January 15, 2019, Nairobi, Kenya. At the Dusit D2 complex, a commercial park featuring a hotel and restaurants, a suicide bomber blows himself up inside one of the restaurants. Many civilians are killed and even more are wounded. Suddenly, 4 attackers at the entrance to the complex begin to open fire indiscriminately. Kenyan anti-terrorism forces rush to mobilize, but before they can react, a panicked phone call sets something even deadlier into motion. The caller isn't reaching the authorities, they're calling Christian Craighead, a British Special Air Service veteran. Craighead, in Kenya to train local special forces, isn't waiting for backup. With nothing but his weapon case, he throws it into his vehicle, floors the gas pedal, and speeds toward the chaos. Craighead arrives well before any police or security forces and immediately sets to work. There's gunfire coming from inside the complex, where the terrorists are looking for more victims. In the restaurant, the original site of the attack, dozens of wounded lie screaming in agony. Craighead begins to drag them out and to safety one by one. Security guards, who up till now have been hiding in fear, are galvanized by his show of courage and begin assisting. Craighead then turns his attention to one of the office complexes, where there's dozens of people trapped by the terrorists. He sprints to the building under fire and begins to clear the office building room by room completely alone. What exactly happened in this stage of the siege remains classified, as Craighead was still operating in his official capacity as a member of the British elite SAS. Recently, Craighead wrote a book about his experiences, which the British Ministry of Defense refused to allow to be published. According to Craighead, the details of what went on inside that building are far more violent and disturbing than anyone knows. What is public record is that after clearing the office of terrorists, Craighead ended up leading 20 trapped workers to safety. Then he teamed up with a Slovenian operator from the Diplomatic Protective Services Tactical Response Unit. Together, the 2 elite soldiers rallied a former security guard and 2 Kenyan police officers to clear the parking lot of terrorists. More survivors would be rescued due to his efforts, and as he emerged from yet another bloody battle, he found Kenyan police and anti-terror forces had finally arrived. To his surprise, the inexperienced Kenyan commander asked Craighead to lead his men. Once more, the SAS man headed straight back into the battle, clearing a 5-story office building and rescuing another 50 survivors. Now Craighead turned his attention to the last stronghold of the terrorist attackers, an 8-story hotel at the heart of the commercial park, where Kenyan police had cornered the terrorists on the 8th floor. Despite having been fighting for hours already, Craighead agreed to lead the effort to neutralize the last terrorists. For 13 hours, Craighead and his team worked to end the siege, until finally, early in the morning, the 2 surviving terrorists tried to break through Craighead and his team, having no other options. The terrorists would be quickly dispatched, and Chris thought his work was done. That is until a Kenyan police chief informed him that 2 more terrorists were hiding in the building's basement. Other Kenyan police officers were too tired and demoralized at the prospect of fighting in the dark confines of the building's basement. But Craighead immediately volunteered and encouraged his team to join him. For 2 hours, Craighead and his team played a deadly game of cat and mouse, until 19 hours after the siege started, it ended with the death of the 2 remaining terrorists. Craighead would be awarded the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross for his incredible display of heroism, yet would also be chastised by at least some British officials for acting without orders. If he had been killed or taken prisoner, it could have become a major international incident. But Craighead would defend himself by reminding his critics of the British SAS's official motto, "Who dares wins." Our next entry is a double-header. 2 elite American soldiers who showed remarkable courage and selflessness in their final hours. Sergeant First Class Randy Shugart and Master Sergeant Gary Gordon, Mogadishu, unknown, estimated dozens. In 1993, Somalia was in the grip of a full-blown civil war that had created a massive humanitarian crisis. UN forces had failed to broker peace, and food aid convoys were regularly looted by different warlords. To try to end the fighting and bring the warlords to heel, the United States sent a detachment of its most elite forces to protect humanitarian convoys and apprehend some of the warlords responsible for perpetuating the violence. On October 3, 1993, the U.S. put into motion an operation to apprehend 2 of Mohammed Farah Aidid's top lieutenants. Aidid's forces had been behind some of the worst attacks against civilians and UN peacekeepers both, and the U.S. aimed to bring him to justice. Delta Force operators, U.S. Army Rangers, a detachment of Navy SEALs, and Air Force Tactical Combat Air Controllers rolled into Mogadishu in what was supposed to be a simple smash and grab. The target in question was a white 3-story house where a top-level meeting was taking place between Aidid's lieutenants. The raid took Adid's men by surprise, and his chief spokesman as well as other senior officials were apprehended almost without violence. And then it all went wrong. Unknown to the Americans, Adid had established a network of informants across the city. These civilians used ordinary cell phones and walkie-talkies to relay updates on the American convoy, and Adid immediately ordered an attack. As the U.S. soldiers were preparing to depart, Somali militias blocked off the roads with burning tires and descended onto the Americans en masse, thousands of them wielding AK-47s and rocket-propelled grenades. News of the trapped convoy soon reached the coalition airbase being used by the U.S., with UN forces needing higher authorization to act. A detachment of 90 volunteer U.S. Rangers and Delta Force operatives sprung into action, rushing into the city to relieve their trapped comrades. An 18-hour firefight would ensue, with some of the fiercest urban combat the world has ever seen since the battle for Stalingrad. Over the course of the encounter, the tiny force of American troops would face off against several thousand Somalis in the heart of Mogadishu. It wouldn't be until nearly 24 hours later that a UN convoy was authorized to enter the city and rescue the besieged troops, who had suffered 18 losses and left 70 badly injured. Among those casualties were U.S. Army Master Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randall Shugart, who were aboard a Black Hawk helicopter laying down sniper fire for the troops below. Somali forces had managed to shoot down one Black Hawk already, though it had been close enough to friendlies on the ground that a rescue party could be formed to look for survivors. Then came the news of a second Black Hawk being shot down, and this time too far away for any of the besieged personnel on the ground to get to them. Gordon and Shugart knew that they were the only hope for the survivors, and despite seeing a huge crowd of Somali gunmen moving toward the wreck, they volunteered to descend and secure the site until a rescue could be mounted. Upon spotting the approaching helicopter, the insurgents laid down heavy fire with machine guns and even a technical equipped with a World War II-era anti-aircraft gun. The pilot was forced to divert and land almost 330 feet away from the crash site. Armed with only one pistol each and their sniper rifles, Gordon and Shugart quickly melted into the cramped alleyways of Mogadishu on a mission to get the downed Americans before the Somalis could. Both men knew it was almost certainly a one-way trip for them. Eliminating squads of gunmen on their way to the site, upon arriving they discovered that only Chief Warrant Officer Michael Durant had survived the crash. One of them pulled the heavily wounded man out of the wreckage, while the other held off approaching gunmen. The two then took up a defensive position around the crash site, fending off wave after wave of attacks. At some point, the two ran out of ammo for their rifles and had to duck into the burning helicopter to retrieve the weapons of the dead men. Upon returning, one of the snipers gave Durant a pistol so he could defend himself, and the two went back to the task of holding off an attacking force of dozens of gunmen. A desperate radio call for help was sent out, but there would be none coming. Shugart would be the first to fall, receiving a fatal gunshot wound. This left only Gordon watching over the critically wounded Durant. When he ran out of ammunition again, Gordon ran back through enemy fire into the burning helicopter to retrieve what ammo was left, a single rifle with 5 rounds of ammunition. Gordon returned to Durant and handed him the rifle, telling him good luck, before heading back into the fight armed with only a pistol. Gordon would also be killed, expending almost all of his pistol ammunition. Durant would be taken captive and released 2 weeks later. For incredible heroism, Gordon and Shugart would be posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Nobody knows just how many of the two snipers killed that day, but they held off a force of hundreds of Somali gunmen completely on their own for hours until finally being overrun. Our next entry asks the question, what happens when the enemy stupidly decides to use your private firing range as cover? Nicholas Randstad, Afghanistan War. Unknown, estimated approximately 90. A group of insurgents move through the rocky terrain of the Afghanistan mountains. Below them is an American traffic checkpoint. The men aim to unleash a barrage of gunfire and RPGs at the soldiers below before melting back into the rugged mountains. But as they stop to survey the valley before them, they fail to spot the white shattered rock faces all around their position. These are the impact points of American Sergeant Nicholas Randstad's Barrett M107 sniper rifle, a rocky outcropping that he'd been using for target practice for days now from his hide almost 6,800 feet away. Randstad was there specifically to stop these attacks, and his weapon was well suited for the task. With distances as much as 1.2 miles between the mountain peaks and the ridgelines, the Barrett sniper rifle and 50 caliber round had the punch necessary to reach out and hurt someone at those ranges. Now the Taliban fighters had inadvertently walked right into the middle of Randstad's private firing range. Randstad settled into position behind his scope, getting range and environmental data from his spotter. 6,800 feet distance to his target. He couldn't be sure, but if he made this shot, he was pretty confident it would be the longest sniper shot in American history. Half a second later, the heavy 50 caliber round was traveling at just under 3,000 feet per second, taking 2.2 seconds to reach its target and causing an eruption of dirt and razor-sharp rock splinters to shower the group. He'd missed, but his second shot didn't. One of the men was caught in the midsection, the big bullet eviscerating him as his corpse tumbled down the rocks to the valley below. Randstad's shot would, in fact, be the longest-range sniper shot in U.S. military history at the time, and his extreme precision would lead him to quickly racking up an impressive kill count. However, no official record exists, as this sort of thing is rarely cataloged by the modern U.S. military. It's estimated, though, that he may have killed as many as 70 insurgents during his time in Afghanistan. Our next entry is a man who, all by himself, fooled a much larger force into retreating twice. Staff Sergeant Adelbert F. Waldron III, Vietnam War, 109 confirmed. U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Adelbert Waldron III is officially known as the deadliest sniper of the Vietnam War, with 109 confirmed kills to his name and an unknown amount unconfirmed. He would also be the most decorated sniper, with 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, a Silver Star, and 3 Bronze Stars to his name. But Waldron wasn't even a soldier when he started his military career, joining the Navy in 1953 and leaving it in 1965. 3 years later, he decided to join the Army and even completed airborne training. Naturally, the Army took an airborne qualified soldier and they stuck him on a boat. Upon arriving in Vietnam, Waldron would attend the 9th Infantry Division Sniper School. Unlike the Marine Corps, the Army had been quicker to adopt the use of snipers in Vietnam and did so more prolifically. After several weeks of training, Waldron was assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 60th Infantry Regiment, to serve with the Mobile Riverine Force, where the Army ran river patrol boats all across the vast waterways of the Mekong. Unlike other Vietnam snipers who used old-school bolt-action rifles, Waldron bucked the trend and used a semi-automatic M21 sniper rifle, firing a 7.62mm round. He also made frequent use of advances in technology, such as starlight scopes, to pick out enemy targets even in the dead of night. A mark of Waldron's exceptional skill, though, was his ability to fire from the deck of a moving river patrol craft, once killing an enemy soldier from one at a range of over 2,900 feet. A pretty incredible feat for a shooter not on the deck of a bucking watercraft. Waldron would earn the Silver Star in January 1969 when he engaged in a 3-hour firefight with a large VC force while on a recon patrol. He not only managed to pin the enemy down, but killed 11 of them before his shooting location was revealed and he was forced to flee. On another mission, Waldron's company was undergoing resupply when they were ambushed by a force of 40 VC. Waldron would engage the enemy from an exposed position, using his accurate fire to suppress the attacking force long enough for the rest of his unit to mount a defense. His aggressive shooting, even while fully exposed to enemy fire, was so ferociously effective, the VC force instead opted to flee the field of battle. 3 nights after that, Waldron would engage a VC probing force at the head of a much larger formation. He confused the VC by running from firing position to firing position in a large rice paddy, making them believe that the American unit was far larger than it actually was. This successfully deterred the main VC force from attacking, instead opting to hit a South Vietnamese army position 2 weeks later. During that attack, Waldron spotted a force of VC attempting to flank the South Vietnamese. His deadly accurate fire killed many and forced the VC to break off the attack, saving the lives of countless ARVN soldiers. In 1969, Waldron would use an old trick on the enemy when during a night patrol his squad ran into a large formation of VC. The VC were moving into position to ambush another American unit who was unaware of their presence. Once more, Waldron would open fire on the enemy with extreme precision, running from one firing position to another. The VC would be forced to abort their attack and slink off back into the jungle under fire. Abu Tassin al-Salihi, the Sheikh of Snipers. War in Iraq, 384 estimated. Abu Tassin al-Salihi is one of the most accomplished snipers you've never heard of. In military service since 1973, al-Salihi served in the Iraqi military all the way from the Yom Kippur War to the second U.S. invasion of Iraq. Al-Salihi became acquainted with a rifle as a young man when he worked as a shepherd in Kuwait and was armed with a rifle to protect his flock and hunt small game. Soon he would return home and join the military, where he would be chosen to fly to the Soviet Union to undergo training alongside Soviet forces in a training partnership program similar to that the U.S. employs with dozens of its allies and partners. Al-Salihi was praised for his proficiency with the rifle and was sent to undertake sniper training. He would go on to fight in the Yom Kippur War, the Second Iraqi-Kurdish War, the Iran-Iraq War, and partake in the invasion of Kuwait, the Gulf War, and then the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq. After Saddam's quick defeat, Al-Salihi thought that he could enter retirement. But in 2013, with the threat of ISIS rising, he decided once more to pick up his rifle. Al-Salihi quickly became a legendary figure amongst the Iraqi forces resisting an ISIS invasion. Initially, he joined the Sadr Brigade in the Popular Mobilization Forces, which fought alongside and cooperated with the Iraqi military without being officially a part of it. However, disagreements with his commanders would see him join the Ali al-Akbar Brigade, where his legend would blossom. It's not exactly known how many kills Al-Salihi would score in his fight against ISIS, but most estimates place it at 384. However, it's unknown how many kills Al-Salihi had across his entire military service, given that he partook in some of Iraq's most violent conflicts. Al-Salihi became an Iraqi hero and a rallying figure. However, he would be killed in 2017 as he charged forward into battle at the age of 64 during an offensive to throw ISIS out from Hawija, Iraq. What modern soldier do you think has the most unbelievable combat record? Drop a comment below.